Guys, I know it's a tough topic. If it hasn't been the bane of your existence, that's probably because you haven't started studying for it yet. Yes, we're talking about the MCAT. But it doesn't have to be the terror it's so oftenly associated with. And in this video, I'm going to share with you exactly what I mean. What's up, YouTube? If you're new here, my name is J.R. Smith and I'm officially an accepted medical school applicant. Wow, that still sounds crazy to say. If you haven't yet, make sure you check out my last video where I go over the schools I've been accepted to. But in this video, we're going to be talking about that dreaded MCAT. I'm going to provide a timestamp up here if you want to skip ahead to any particular sections of this video. Now, MCAT stands for Medical College Admission Test, and it is the required entrance exam that measures a candidate's readiness for medical school. Just like other entrance exams like the ACT or the SAT, the score that you get on this test has pretty big implications on your competitiveness as an applicant. Yes, the MCAT is a beast of an exam, taking up to 7.5 hours to complete. It's broken up into these 4 sections, but basically what you need to know is biology, chemistry, physics, biochemistry, psychology, sociology, and how to read critically. That is why it is so important to learn this material thoroughly in your pre-medical classes that you take in undergrad, because ultimately it'll make studying for this test that much easier if you have a strong foundation in these classes. The score you can get on each section ranges from 118 to 132. Why they don't just start from 0 and give you a point for every correct answer, I don't know. It's medicine, so it's probably complicated. But based on these ranges, the score range that you can get for your total score is 472 to 528. Now, the AAMC offers a database called the Medical School Admissions Requirements, or the MSAR, which effectively, among a slew of other things, gives you the median MCAT scores of every medical school in both the US and Canada. And so I recommend using this tool to determine an appropriate goal score for you based on what type of schools you want to be competitive for. So we're going to take a look at this website now. So this is what the MSAR looks like. This is not a promo or anything. I just want to show you the tools that I personally used and found helpful. Now, forewarning, it does cost about $30, but I think it's absolutely worth it and probably one of the cheapest things that you pay for throughout this application process. But as you can see in the middle, there's a list of medical schools. Right now it's sorted in alphabetical order, but you can change how it's sorted if you want to, or you can always just search for your institution here in this search box. You can see right away the school's median GPA and median MCAT. This is a good time to note that if your GPA is lower than the median GPA for the school that you're looking at, it doesn't mean that it's the end of the world. You know, schools grade differently, some may be more difficult than others, etc. So I would think that your MCAT is valued more than your GPA would. So if you don't have these crazy GPAs, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're not competitive for these schools, because I know I didn't. But now if we click on the school, let's just click on Albany for an example, you'll be given a ton of information about the school, and I recommend looking through all of this for the schools you're interested in. But for the sake of this video, we're going to scroll down until we see this graphic here. And now this is a diagram of the data pertaining to the MCAT for this specific school's most recent class's MCAT scores. And what I like to do is I like to go to this drop-down menu here and actually change it to all matriculated students for this school. And the reason why I do that is because it's going to give us a more accurate picture of the last class's stats. This is because if you include students who got accepted but didn't actually matriculate or go there, this includes a lot of students with relatively high stats who got into other great schools and chose to go elsewhere, so they may skew the stats to the right a bit. In most cases, the difference won't be dramatic, but you can see the figure shifted slightly to the left here. So let's go up to this figure legend. So you can see this dark blue represents scores in the 25th through the 75th percentile range, which are the majority of their students, and the teal color represents the 10th through the 90th percentile range. And so scores above this right border, so scores greater than 514 would be scores higher than 90% of the class, whereas scores less than this left border, so 507 in this case, would be the bottom 10% of their students. Now, it is important to recognize that the goal is to be competitive for a school, and everyone who matriculated to this school was obviously competitive enough to get in. So you can think of some of these scores maybe below this 10% mark to still represent 10% of their class. Obviously, if you want to be really competitive, you want to score closer to the median, which is this gray box here, this 510. But if you do score less than the median, that doesn't mean that it's impossible for you to go to that school unless you're 10 to 15 points maybe below their 10% mark. Then you may want to look at other choices. They also have a similar diagram here going over the separate parts of the MCAT, but for all intents and purposes, this is going to be a big figure for determining your goal score. And so when I determine my goal score, I want to make sure that I'm at least trying to aim for that median score. So if I want to go to Albany, I want to be shooting for a 510 when I determine my goal score. So as you can tell, this database can be very useful and helpful in both giving you a lot of information about medical schools as well as helping determine an appropriate goal score for you based on the type of medical schools that you want to be competitive for. So now let's get personal. A lot of people were asking me, what did I get on my MCAT? What are my stats based on the schools that I got accepted to? Many people may think that I scored in the 90+ percentile. Not only is this not true, but I actually had to take this exam twice. The first time I kind of underestimated this exam and I did not do a good job of planning. I scheduled my exam for 3 months after my wedding because I read somewhere that 3 months was a typical time that you give yourself to prepare for this exam. And though that may be true, I did not factor in things like a week-long honeymoon, the 2 weeks that it would take to move my wife and I from North Carolina and Minnesota to our new home in Colorado, or the mental energy that I would be expending in starting a new job as a research intern, which I was doing at the time. So now we're down to just over 2 months to study while balancing this with starting a new job and the responsibilities of being a newlywed. Not my greatest moment as a planner. And so the score I received on my first exam was a 504. And no, this isn't a terrible score. It's in the 61st percentile. But for me personally, I wanted to bring a stronger score to my application. And I knew that I just didn't give everything I had in my first outing studying for this exam. I took my first test in September of 2018 and received my score about a month later in October. It takes about 30 days or so for you to receive your score, and you will actually know the date that your score will be released in advance, which is really nice. I then dedicated the next 3 months to studying for the MCAT, and I subsequently scored a 511, which was a huge improvement and placed me in the 83rd percentile. I was happy with my score. It was in the ballpark of the scores I was receiving on my practice exams, and most importantly, it was an improvement from my previous score. So I think it's really important to note that taking the MCAT more than once does not necessarily look bad to medical schools. Medical schools are much more understanding of circumstances than I think people give them credit for, and if you improve, it shows things like determination, work ethic, and other positive attributes that they look for in a candidate. But if you don't improve, that is not going to be a good look. So only retake the MCAT if you are pretty confident that you will do better than you did on the previous attempt. Now, even my second score still falls on the lower end of the spectrum for some of the schools that I got accepted into, but this just goes to show that there's so much more outside of the MCAT that schools consider when considering how competitive you are as an applicant. You can still get into top tier medical schools without necessarily a top tier MCAT score. And throughout future videos of this series, we'll go over other things in my application that really propelled me and really enhanced my competitiveness. So what did I do differently to study for the MCAT the second time? So to start, I actually planned every single day up until my test date in terms of what I was going to be doing to prepare. This included rest days. You don't want to get burnt out. You want to avoid burnout during this study period. But I had a plan of every single day what I was going to do to prepare. I also used the Princeton Review study materials. And again, this is not an ad. I just want to share with you what I personally did. I found these to be extremely helpful, and I know that they can be very, very pricey, but you can also find things like used books online for relatively cheap, or you can always hit the homies up and ask if they've used their books already, if they can just give you theirs or loan you theirs, or you can buy them for cheap from them. So hit the homies up, that's always a cheap option. Outside of the books teaching you the content that you actually need to know for the exam, one of the best features of these study materials are the practice exams. When you're preparing for the MCAT, it is absolutely critical that you take at least half a dozen practice exams. The AAMC also offers tools such as more practice exams and question banks, and again, not an ad, but these are tools that I use that really helped bolster my confidence in preparing for this exam. The AAMC materials actually most accurately represent the questions that you can see on the actual exam. They do a better job of resembling the exam than things like the Princeton Review or Kaplan, and so I would really take advantage of the tools that the AAMC directly offers. Now, I stress the importance of taking full-length practice tests for two main reasons. One, you can't expect to walk into a 7.5-hour exam and do well. It takes training to be able to do a 7.5-hour exam, trust me. The same way that you can't walk into a marathon and expect to do well when the furthest you've ever ran was a mile that one time in middle school, you cannot expect to sit for a 7.5-hour exam and be prepared for that if you have not practiced doing that repeatedly. This means incorporating the time restraints. So this is about 1.5 hours per section with a 10-minute break between sections and a 30-minute break halfway through for a lunch. And the second reason why it's critical to take multiple full-length practice exams is because it's a great way to test your preparedness for this test. Early on, I spent a lot of my time reading the books, making sure I understood the content, but as the test date approached, I took a lot of practice exams until I was consistently getting a score that I was happy with if I were to get that score on the actual exam. And again, I determined the range of scores that I'd be happy with based on the median scores of the schools that I wanted to be competitive for. Now, this brings up an important point. Just because one applicant may want to score a 520 to be competitive to go to Harvard, another applicant shouldn't feel pressure to have the same goals. This is how we can reduce stress and why the MCAT doesn't have to be as daunting as it may seem. If you want to stay close to home and the closest medical school to you has a median MCAT score of 505, then make your study schedule in a way that you're getting roughly a 505 on your practice test as your test date approaches. In the same way, if you want to score a 520, then just make the necessary adjustments so that you're scoring roughly a 520 on your practice tests as your test date approaches. One route will surely be more difficult, but it will result in the score you need. The other route will probably involve much less work, but it will still result in the score you need. This is why determining a goal score is so important, and know that not everyone has to try to be in the 99th percentile. So not everyone will necessarily have a nightmare of an experience studying for the MCAT, and I think if we remove some of this seemingly overwhelming pressure that we can have with a test like this, not only will our experience be that much more bearable and that much more enjoyable, but we'll actually perform a lot better. This is just part of the process. Choose to enjoy the process. You just determine what score you need based on the schools that you want to be competitive for, map out a study schedule, follow your study schedule, which includes things like studying the material and, most importantly, taking multiple practice exams. Following your practice exams, make any modifications that you need to so that as the test date approaches, you are consistently scoring in the range that you need to go to the schools that you want to go to. That's really all there is to it. And when you actually come to your test date, you'll have so much less stress and you'll have assurance in yourself because you've proven to yourself that you can score exactly what you need to multiple times already. But again, I can't stress it enough, enjoy the process. You will have challenges and hurdles along the way. There'll be times where you don't get the score you need to on your practice exams, or you're having difficulty understanding a concept, or you may even have to take it twice. But if you embrace this opportunity to progress along your career and you see it as an opportunity, you're gonna have that much more enjoyment going through this study process. I've attached a link to my study schedule below so you can have a frame of reference when creating your own study schedule. For those who have already taken the MCAT, I'd love to hear any tips or strategies that helped you, so share those in the comments so that everybody can benefit from it. Learning does not have to be miserable, even when the material doesn't necessarily correlate with what you want to be or what you want to do as a doctor. We are called to be lifelong learners in this profession, and this isn't just a reality that we should deal with, this is a reality we should look to embrace. I hope this simple change in perspective can make the MCAT seem less like a nightmare and more like an opportunity. And I hope that this video helped for those who are currently studying for the MCAT or who plan to study for the MCAT. And I hope sharing my personal experience with the MCAT shows that you don't have to get a top tier score to be accepted into a top tier school. So with that, hit that subscribe button, tap that bell. New videos coming every week and you're not gonna wanna miss it. I hope this series that we're just getting into can really be beneficial for people who are either getting ready to apply or who are looking to apply to medical school in the distant future. So keep evolving, and I'll see you guys next time. As highly as you may think, or that this is just part of the process, so choose to enjoy the process. You just